Small towns have a charm. Quiet streets, friendly faces, life moving slowly. But some hide shadows that even locals fear. In these towns, the air feels heavier, streets feel watched, and every creak or whisper sends chills down your spine. History, mystery, and forgotten stories cling to every corner. From abandoned houses to eerie cemeteries, these are the places where curiosity can turn to fear. Here are the 10 creepiest small towns in the US. Locals warn you not to visit. If you enjoyed this chilling journey, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to Traveling Guide Hub for more spine-tingling adventures. 1. Dudley Town, Connecticut. The air over Dark Entry Forest presses in on you, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Even the wind seems hesitant, rustling the treetops in a whisper. As you step toward what remains of Dudley Town, an uneasy silence settles over the valley, the kind that makes your own footsteps sound impossibly loud. In the 1740s, a few families, the Dudleys among them, carved homes from this rugged Connecticut land. The valley, shadowed by mountains and dense forest, was unforgiving. Crops struggled, and the soil rarely yielded enough. Yet for decades, these settlers eked out a life, clearing stones and building modest homes, their lives quietly woven into the larger Cornwall township. By the early 1900s, most families had abandoned the settlement. Crop failures, poor soil, and the promise of better land elsewhere left the town empty. Forest reclaimed the homes. All that remained were stone foundations, cellar holes, and an odd, lingering emptiness. Over time, stories began to circulate about Dudley Town's unusual aura. Locals whispered of the valley being cursed, linking it to an ancestor accused of treason centuries before, though historians have found no evidence. Visitors started reporting strange sensations, sudden chills, a heaviness in the air, and the unnerving feeling that someone or something is watching. One hiker recounted pausing on a narrow path when they heard faint footsteps behind them, though no one was there. Another described a sudden dizziness and nausea as they explored the moss-covered ruins, a sensation so strong they had to leave immediately. But one story stands out above the rest. A group of friends claimed to see fleeting shadows moving across the path, too deliberate to be wind or wildlife. So, when you think of Dudley Town, what do you imagine lingers in those silent, shadowed woods? Is it merely the memory of its settlers, or something else entirely? 2. Centralia, Pennsylvania. The smell of scorched earth and coal dust hit me first, clinging to my throat like a warning. A strange warmth rose from the cracked pavement, and faint wisps of smoke curled from hidden fissures in the ground. Even the air felt heavier here in Centralia, Pennsylvania, as if the town itself exhaled the heat of something unseen. Hissing sounds drifted from the earth below, soft but insistent, like whispers from an invisible furnace. Centralia began as a thriving coal mining town in the mid-19th century. Incorporated in 1866, it grew around rich anthracite seams that fueled homes and factories across the Northeast. Families moved in, miners labored in the tunnels, and streets once bustled with shops, schools, and community life. Coal was the town's heartbeat, driving both prosperity and routine. Everything changed in May 1962. Workers lit a fire in the community landfill, a common practice at the time, unaware that the pit sat above abandoned coal mines. Flames spread underground, igniting a coal seam that no one could extinguish. The fire beneath Centralia has burned ever since. Heat waves ripple through the ground, vents release steam in ghostly plumes, and the earth occasionally hisses or groans as if alive. Residents noticed the town was changing long before official evacuations began. Mornings brought unnerving warmth in unexpected places. Birds and insects seemed absent, replaced by a low, constant hum, the sound of burning coal miles beneath. One neighbor recalled walking past a crack where smoke drifted upward, inhaling the acrid scent and feeling her hair stand on end. In 1981, 12-year-old Todd Domboski discovered the danger firsthand.
While playing outside, the earth gave way beneath him. He fell into a cavern filled with hot steam. Gripping a tree root, he was pulled out, shaken but alive. The incident revealed the fire's silent but lethal power. By the 1980s, the government began relocating residents. Homes were demolished, Route 61 closed, and by 2002, the zip code was retired. Today, only a handful remain, surrounded by empty lots, cracked streets, and the constant reminder that the ground is alive. Walking here, you feel the heat rising, smell the smoke, and hear the faint hisses. The earth moves in ways it shouldn't. It's easy to wonder, if the fire can swallow streets and lives quietly for decades, how much longer before it decides to rise again?
3. Stull, Kansas. The air felt wrong the moment I stepped onto the hill. Even the fading Kansas light seemed to shiver across the headstones. A quiet weight pressed against my chest, as if the ground itself was holding its breath. Somewhere in the distance, the wind stirred the prairie grass, but it sounded almost deliberate, like a warning. Stull began in 1857, settled by Pennsylvania Dutch farmers who carved a small rural community into the rolling Kansas landscape. They built the evangelical Emmanuel Church on a gentle rise and laid their loved ones to rest in the adjoining cemetery. Life was simple and centered on faith. Over decades, families moved away, congregations dwindled, and the church fell into decay. By the early 20th century, it was abandoned. Storms battered the structure, and it was eventually demolished, leaving only the cemetery as a silent reminder of the town that once thrived here. By the 1970s, Stull Cemetery had earned a reputation that far outstripped its quiet history. Tales circulated of sudden chills, inexplicable sounds, and an oppressive weight that pressed on visitors. People spoke of the hilltop as though it watched them, responding to their presence in ways they could not explain. One story lingers in my mind. A lone visitor arrived at dusk, flashlight in hand, determined to explore the quiet cemetery. As she walked among the stones, she felt the temperature drop sharply. Footsteps echoed behind her, slow, deliberate. She turned. No one. Her flashlight flickered. She tried to move faster, but the air felt thick, resisting each step. She stopped, heart racing. A whisper of wind, footsteps, silence heavier than the night itself. She bolted to the edge of the cemetery, never glancing back, but the sense of being watched lingered long after she left. Other visitors report cold spots that grip the spine, a damp, earthy scent that seems to rise from nowhere, and a quiet that feels alive, like the ground itself is listening. Locals insist the cemetery is a historic resting place, fenced and private, but for those who venture near, it is impossible to ignore the lingering tension, the stories, and the weight of what came before. Standing among the stones as darkness gathers, the silence presses in. The wind whispers. The air feels thick with history and unease. And you can't help but wonder, what truly lingers here, and how much of it is the world, and how much is in our own fear.
4. Bodie, California. The wind howled across Bodie's sun-bleached streets, rattling the boards of abandoned storefronts. Dust swirled around my feet. Shadows shifted in corners, just beyond sight. Something in the air made every step feel watched, like the town itself resented intruders. Bodie began in 1859, when prospector W.S. Bodie discovered gold in the eastern Sierra Nevada. The settlement boomed almost overnight, drawing miners, merchants, and families. Hotels, saloons, schools, and even a newspaper sprang up among the rugged landscape. Life was harsh, but wealth kept people tethered to the dusty streets. By the early 20th century, fires, declining gold yields, and brutal winters forced residents away. By the 1940s, Bodie was largely abandoned, left to the elements and the slow decay of time. Walking through Bodie today, the silence is oppressive, pressing on ears and chest. The creak of sagging porches echoes unnervingly.
Some visitors feel the weight of unseen eyes. Others report sudden chills slicing through warm air. Occasionally, a shadow moves along a window pane, impossible to track, or a door shifts on its own. One photographer lingered until sunset, chasing Bodie's golden glow. Footsteps tapped behind him on the boardwalk. He spun. Empty street. Another shadow darted near the church. Door creaked. No wind. Click. Tap. Tap. Heart pounding. He froze. Steps quickened. He ran. Faster. Skin prickled. Something brushed past him. Too fast. Not human. Silence fell, heavier than the night itself. He dared not look back. Historians note that Bodie is preserved as a state historic park, maintained in a state of arrested decay. Yet the town carries the memory of those who lived and labored here. Tools clatter in imagination, wagon wheels groan, faint whispers ride the wind. Dust swirls through broken windows, shadows linger where none should be. Standing on the sun-faded street, the weight of history presses down. Broken windows frame empty rooms. Wind whips dust into your eyes, and in that light you realize Bodie does not just hold the past. It watches, moves, waits.
5. Picher, Oklahoma. A thick, metallic taste hung in the air. Even the breeze felt wrong. Dust clung to skin, settled in lungs. It smelled of iron and decay. The town seemed to breathe lead and zinc instead of oxygen. Picher began in the early 20th century as a booming mining hub in the tri-state lead and zinc district. Families arrived seeking work, building homes along the bustling streets. Kids played among the chat piles, unaware the ground beneath them was slowly poisoning their bones. Stores, schools, and churches thrived, but decades of unregulated mining fractured the land. Waste piled up, water ran orange. By the late 20th century, lead contamination was discovered in children. Federal intervention followed. Residents accepted buyouts, and by 2009, Picher was officially abandoned. Today, silent streets and jagged ruins dominate the landscape. Some report an unsettling stillness. A low hum fills the ears. Dust hangs in strange waves, uneven, defying gravity. Rusted signs sway in a wind that barely exists. Shadows seem to linger longer than they should. Even the sky feels heavy over the broken buildings. One visitor recounted a sudden chill beside an abandoned school. The sun had just slipped behind a ruined wall, casting long, distorted shadows across the playground. Goosebumps crawled up arms. The air felt thick, almost resisting each breath. A movement caught the corner of the eye, a piece of debris rolling as if nudged by an invisible hand. Heart racing. Click. Tap tap. The sound followed with no source. Silence dropped like a weight. The chill lingered long after the visitor fled. Historians note that Picher is part of the Tar Creek Superfund site, preserved only as a cautionary remnant of industrial overreach. Tools clatter in imagination. Wagons groan in memory. Faint whispers ride the wind. Dust swirls through broken windows. Shadows linger. The ground itself seems reluctant to let go of its past. Standing amid cracked pavement and rusted signs, the weight of history presses down. Streets that once rang with children's laughter are empty. Dust rises and swirls, and you wonder what echoes are left behind in streets where laughter once rang, and now silence poisons the air.
6. Helltown, Ohio. A humid stillness clung to the overgrown path where Helltown once stood, and somewhere beyond the trees a distant creek gurgled, its gentle murmur oddly at odds with the choking quiet. The smell of damp earth and decaying wood hung heavy in the air, as though the land itself stubbornly clung to every abandoned structure that time had left behind. Originally known as Boston, the settlement in Summit County, Ohio began in the early 19th century, its first cabins erected around 1806 near the Ohio and Erie Canal.
Farmers, mill workers, and canal laborers built homes, churches, and schools, and life flowed at the slow, steady rhythm of a small American community. Over decades, the canal's importance waned, and by the mid-20th century, other industries and transportation had eclipsed it. In 1974, Congress passed legislation empowering the National Park Service to expand what would become Cuyahoga Valley National Park. The government began purchasing properties in Boston Township, and many residents sold and left with little time to prepare. Homes were boarded up, streets emptied, and before long, the town, once full of life, became a collection of vacant buildings edged by forest. By 2016, most remaining structures were demolished or reclaimed by nature. Because the government stalled on park construction and left the buildings empty for decades, locals began to speak in hushed tones about the area's eerie atmosphere. People reported the sensation of unseen eyes watching as they trudged along Stanford Road. Visitors exploring near old foundations described an oppressive silence that pressed against the eardrums, broken only by the distant crack of a twig or the rustle of unseen movement in the brush. Some claimed to feel sudden chills on warm afternoons or the eerie echo of footsteps when no one else was near. One frequent mention among those drawn by the stories was the old Boston cemetery, where moss-covered stones stood in crooked rows. People spoke of an unsettling calm there, where even birds seemed reluctant to sing, and shadows stretched in directions the sun could not justify. Standing where families once walked, where laughter once lingered, now only silence remains. The wind whistles through empty frames and cracked pavement, and you wonder, when a place is emptied of its people, what else does it take with it?
7. Marfa, Texas. A vast silence blanketed the desert outside Marfa. The wind shifted, carrying faint desert scents, but nothing else moved. The air turned sharp and dry against skin. The horizon stretched endlessly, broken only by distant ridges that swallowed sound. Even a single bird call rang startlingly loud, echoing across the open plain. Marfa began in the 1880s as a modest railroad water stop in remote West Texas, where steam locomotives paused and travelers rested. Ranchers and settlers built homes, schools, and churches, carving out life amid the desert expanse. For decades, it remained quiet, the nights long and uninterrupted. In the 1970s, minimalist artist Donald Judd transformed old hangars into galleries, drawing an international arts community to the town. Yet even with this cultural revival, the surrounding desert remained vast and unlit, so few artificial lights that any glow became magnified, leaving observers unsure what to trust. The first recorded Marfa light sightings dates back to 1883, when a young cowboy herding cattle saw flickering points of light along Mitchell Flat. He assumed campfires, but no trace remained. Generations of ranchers, travelers, and native communities reported similar phenomena, glowing orbs hovering above the desert, white, red, orange, or blue, splitting, merging, drifting, then fading into the night. Sometimes the lights appear alongside a breeze that feels too cool, moving against expectation, or accompanied by faint, unidentifiable sounds. Visitors today gather at the viewing area east of town. After dusk, they describe sudden, unnatural silence. Dust swirls, hands tremble, breaths catch. Shadows flicker across the ground. A fluttering chill brushes the skin. The orbs appear, drifting sideways, pulsing and disappearing. The sheer scale of the desert, the emptiness, and the sky stretching infinitely above leaves even the most skeptical uneasy. Whether atmospheric phenomena, distant headlights distorted by heat, or something else entirely, the lights remain unexplained. Standing beneath the vast West Texas sky, watching tiny flecks of color dance on the horizon, you feel a tension that is both exhilarating and unsettling. And you can't help but wonder, what else might be out there, watching from the dark, beyond the edge of sight?
8. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The air along the Ohio River was cool, still, heavy with damp earth and mist. Street lamps cast long shadows that twitched at the edges of vision, making every silence feel too deep. Somewhere, water lapped against the riverbank, soft and constant, as if marking time in defiance of the windless night. Point Pleasant was founded in 1794, where the Kanawha River met the Ohio, a quiet riverside town with centuries of normal life, until the mid-1960s, when something began to stir. For decades, it had been known for river trade, modest homes, and a tight-knit community. Life flowed slowly, predictably, until the unusual sightings that would change the town forever. On the evening of November 15, 1966, two local couples reported seeing something unlike any animal. A tall figure, nearly 7 feet high, wings folded, eyes glowing red. It appeared almost human. When it lifted into the air and chased their car for miles, they fled in terror. The creature, later called the Mothman, became the focal point of over 100 reports in the following weeks. Strange lights in the sky, fleeting shapes moving between trees, and a soft, haunting screech that seemed to come from nowhere. Standing in a field at night, you might feel it too, a silence that presses, a weight that chills the skin and quickens the heartbeat. In December 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed, killing 46. Many locals linked the tragedy to the sightings, though no explanation was ever found. People reported feeling an oppressive heaviness around the TNT area and the deserted fields where the creature had been seen. Some claimed sudden chills on warm nights, where the sense of being watched from dark corners of the landscape, even when alone. Today, Point Pleasant embraces its legacy with a festival, a museum, and a towering statue of the Mothman. But on nights when the Ohio River runs silent and the wind dies, you feel the memory of those strange lights lingering. Shadows flicker, the air seems to pulse with anticipation, and you wonder what might still be watching from the dark, just beyond the edge of sight. 9. Rulo, Nebraska. The sun dipped low over the Missouri River, casting long shadows across Rulo's streets. The air smelled of dry grass and old dust. A lone bird called along the riverbank, sharp against the stillness. Even the wind seemed hesitant, leaving the quiet heavy, like the town itself was holding its breath. Founded in 1856 and incorporated in 1858, Rulo grew along the Missouri River, a typical Midwestern river town shaped by community, trade, and open skies. For decades, life was steady, predictable, and small in scale, until the early 1980s, when a dark chapter unfolded that would forever stain the town's quiet reputation. Law enforcement discovered a compound north of town after reports of thefts and unusual activity. Inside a hog shed, they found guns, explosives, and the graves of 2 victims, a 5-year-old boy and a 26-year-old man. Michael W. Ryan, the man behind it all, was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. He later died in prison in 2015. The revelations shocked the community and left a lingering sense of unease. Walking past the old compound at dusk, some locals feel a weight pressing against their chest. Shadows stretch long, the horizon feels impossibly wide. Something seems to watch from the fields. Even today, visitors report moments of inexplicable tension, a sudden chill in warm air, the faint sound of footsteps over dry grass, or the feeling that the open space itself is watching. Stories of the past linger in the empty streets and along the riverbanks, carried on the wind that seems to know too much. The quiet is not natural here. It has a memory, shaped by the lives lost and the fear that once gripped the town.
On a quiet Rulo street at twilight, the memory of those dark events hangs in the air. You wonder, how much of a place's past lingers in its silence?
10 Barrow, Utqiaġvik, Alaska. A bitter wind cut across the frozen flats as Utqiaġvik's long twilight deepened into near darkness, and the air tasted of sea ice and cold that seemed to seep straight into your bones. The sky wore a pale steel-blue glow, an eerie light that never warmed, as if the sun itself had forgotten to rise. Utqiaġvik, known as Barrow until 2016, is the northernmost city in the United States, perched more than 300 miles above the Arctic Circle on Alaska's north slope. For over 1,500 years, the Inupiat people have thrived here, carving out life amid extremes of light and ice. In the 19th century, traders and whalers arrived, and a permanent settlement grew, shaped by subsistence hunting, community resilience, and the unforgiving Arctic climate. Life here has never been easy, but it has been continuous until the yearly arrival of polar night, a period when the sun dips below the horizon and does not return for weeks, leaving the town in a stretched, dim twilight. This shift in daylight honors ancient rhythms, but also strains the senses of those who live with it. Every late autumn, when the sun sets for the final time, Utqiaġvik enters polar night, a phenomenon caused by Earth's axial tilt that leaves regions above the Arctic Circle without direct sunlight for months. For about 60 to 65 days, the sun does not rise, though civil twilight paints the snowy landscape in muted blues and grays for a few hours each day. Temperatures plunge far below zero, and even familiar sounds seem muffled, as if the cold air thickens the silence itself. Visitors and residents alike speak of the strange hush that settles over the town during this time. Some describe how footsteps sound heavier, more isolated, as if the snow itself absorbs all vibration. Others mention a stillness that presses against the ears, making distant creaks from wooden structures seem unnervingly close. At night, when the northern lights flicker overhead in greens and purples, the horizon feels impossibly vast, and the faint whisper of wind across the ice can make even seasoned locals shiver. Despite the darkness, life continues. Schools remain open, families gather for community events, and routines adapt to the shifting light. Still, there is a palpable tension in the air during polar night, a sense that the world has paused between heartbeat and breath. As you stand beneath that endless Arctic sky, watching the dim twilight stretch across the ice, you wonder, in a place where daylight disappears for weeks, what parts of ourselves fade into the dark with it?